Needed.
Hello and welcome to the Energy Realities podcast with David Blackman in Texas. How are you today, David? Your mic is muted.
Hear me? My mic is muted. Is it still muted?
No, we can hear you.
Unfortunately, we can hear you.
I'm having problems, connectivity issues this morning. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, I'm here. Everything is grand. It's raining this morning on my backyard, and so I'm happy.
Well, no heat waves for Texas?
Well, it got a little hot, but, nothing abnormal for this time of year. In fact, it's really kind of been below normal for about a month now, and that's very nice. I'm sure that's climate change, and I'm for it.
And so you don't need to take as many hydration breaks as the, football players.
No, absolutely not. I never exert myself in that fashion. I'm too lazy.
Oh, this is so stupid. I've got Tammy Nemeth in the UK. How are you, Tammy?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day, nice and hot, which, will help the corn grow. So, yay.
Somebody must be unhappy. Oh, and you just had your PM giving his resignation?
Yes, he's stepping down, and they're going to have a leadership. I don't know if it's going to be a coronation or if they're actually going to have a race to see who will be the leader. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple days.
How very exciting. And we've got Stu Turley in his bunker somewhere. How are you, Stu?
Doing fantastic. You can throw a rock to the Stargate here in Abilene, Texas. So it's an amazing facility that they're building out there.
So are you throwing rocks at it?
No, it's actually increasing the home value. So you got to love it.
Great. But today we're not talking about data centers. We're talking about the latest in forecast. The International Energy Agency is back to its glut narrative in its latest monthly oil market report. It's like they were waiting for some positive news out of the Middle East to say that oil markets totally swinging into oversupply next year, because apparently the demand response to the war has been so strong. Demand is not coming back, but supply is coming back, and this is going to be a bad thing. On the other hand, we have the chief executive of Shell saying that all the cheap oil is now gone and we need to invest more in new supply. And I think he suggested that oil is going to be more expensive over the longer term. And because David has written about this extensively, let's start with you, David. What do you think about all this? The IEA and Shell CEO talking about the end of cheap oil.
Well, I hope y'all can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I seem to be frozen at my end. So yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't think all the easy oil is gone or even close to it. It was interesting to me to see that Shell CEO is still using that talking point, because I worked for Shell 20 years ago, and a group of us put together what we called the company's first comprehensive messaging platform, which ended up being about 2 inches thick. And that was one of the included messages in it that our CEOs at that time kept talking a point. I didn't think it was right then. I don't think it's right now, just because I think what constitutes easy oil, quote, easy oil, evolves over time with technology. And, 25 years ago, everyone thought shale oil in the United States was not just hard, but impossible to produce. And now it's the easiest thing on the planet. It's the one thing on the planet that keeps growing and growing and growing. So I think you have to say that oil from shale in the United States is easy oil. I don't know how else to define it. Yeah, it's highly technical. There's a lot of advanced technology and hard work that goes into drilling those wells, and a lot of investment, but the fields are fully delineated. Everybody knows where the resource is. You have a zero danger of drilling dry holes unless you're just an idiot who screws up the hole, which does happen occasionally. So how much easier does it get in the oil patch? It doesn't get any easier than what we're doing in the Permian Basin right now. That's easy oil. And so I just think it's a stale talking point. It was stale 20 years ago. We've been using it by then for 20 years. And maybe Shell ought to update its message platform. No offense to my friends who are still at Shell that Shell that actually worked on that message platform, but maybe it's time to retire that one.
Tammy just sent a link about a much older message from Shell. Would you care to elaborate on that, Tammy?
So I recall back in like 2008, before the fracking revolution, they were on and on about we're at peak oil, we're end of the easy oil era. And I found this article from BBC back in 2008, May 27th, Shell sees end of easy oil era. And in this interview, they go on that companies have to go to ever more extreme lengths to sustain production. And we need more money because the easy, cheap oil's gone, and so on and so forth. So it's like a broken record. And, we had peak oil in the 70s when American production started to decline. And then when a bunch of oil came online in the 80s, suddenly all the exploration budgets kind of went down because the prices crashed. And then you saw a bit of an uptick, and then it was peak oil again. And so it's a broken record. It keeps going around and saying cheap and easy's gone.
They just like doing this.
Right. And so on the one hand, I think I think they're kind of right in a way, in that when you're at a cusp of a new technology, let's say that they're developing something, things are a bit expensive, and oh my gosh, it's hard to do, or those easy finds are gone. Well, you just have to kind of expand where you're looking, and then those costs can come down. So cheap, easy, whatever can alter over time. What I think is so fascinating is that we have the oil sands in Canada, which is this massive resource. Everybody knows where it is. There's a huge upfront cost to start production, whether it's steam-assisted gravity drainage or whether it's mining the oil sands. But it's not like a conventional field where there's arguments that the fields, the unconventional fields in the United States through fracking, deplete very quickly compared to other conventional fields. But oil sands doesn't deplete in the same way. It's not a typical reservoir. It's like a really big pile of sand mixed with tar and oil that you separate out. And so you can ramp up, and that input cost is kind of high at the beginning, but then you have steady production for 40 some years where it doesn't decline like a reservoir. So the oil's there in Canada. It's billions, maybe hundreds of billions. And the one thing holding it back to help these supply ratios is poor policy and infrastructure. So potential's there. It's the price of cost is going down. So you want to talk about cheap and easy? It's there. It's there.
So what about the International Energy Agency? I'm going to quote from it because it says that this year demand is going to crash by over 1 million barrels daily, and supply is going to crash for the full year by an estimated, was it 2.5? Oh no, supply is set to fall by 3.9 million barrels daily, which says deficit. And then towards the end of its summary, it says that as soon as next year, this is going to flip into an overhang because global oil demand is going to rise by a relatively modest 2 million barrels daily, while supply is going to surge by 8 million barrels daily. I don't know how supply is going to surge so fast, especially if all the easy oil is gone. Stu, what do you think about that?
Oh, define easy oil, as David was saying. I think that I wrote a piece at EnergyNewsBeat.co a little while ago, and Bakken shale boom chasing second round with enhanced recovery. And you take a look at the EOR, as we typically say with an acronym there, EOR, as opposed to Eeyore out of Winnie the Pooh. You sit back and take a look at North Dakota, the Bakken formation is actually doing quite well. And so when you take a look at 84 million barrels or something like that, some ungodly number is through putting in CO2, which is actually good. Taking CO2 capture and actually using it for something other than feeling good about yourself is actually kind of nice. So, but where you are taking a look at where I'm also seeing a lot of the super majors are going around the world and they're putting in, take a look at Chevron and their extra work around the Leviathan field, putting in natural gas into so they can provide that. You've got Exxon in Guyana. You have all the other major areas that they are getting. Their cost to get Guyana oil is about $20. So when you sit back and take a look, Greenland now has in December actually a field coming online. And that has got as David mentioned, the expensive part is putting in the original pipelines and the first wells and the tanks and the export mechanism. Once those come on, there is more in the reserves right off of Greenland than in the North, not in the North Sea, but in the north slope of Alaska, which my grandfather helped find. So when you take a look, they had a choice of either drilling in Greenland or drilling on the North Slope. North Slope average cost is for recovery is about $50. Guyana is about $20. So cheap is how you define it.
Yeah. Great point.
I want to say goodbye to Witness Protection 4233, who's told Stu he can tell you're preparing to enforce your opinion by your posture, and then said, I'm leaving. Adios. Okay. Let's keep going.
How do you enforce an opinion? It's not a rule or
Why am I trying to force my opinion?
Yeah. Well, he's just wrong. He's just wrong. Like he said, fracking the Yukon, that's not where the oil sands are. It's like, it's in Alberta. So
Yeah,
whatever. Dude doesn't know.
And there's no fracking involved. Anyway, sorry.
MD Bone has a good point there, though, where he says the end of cheap everything because Putin kicked off the resource war about 10 years ago too soon by invading Ukraine.
Even this is Putin's fault, really?
The end of cheap everything. Okay. Yeah. Well, things definitely are a lot more expensive than they were in February 2022. That's for sure. It's not necessarily because of that war, though. I mean, we in the United States printed $6 trillion in 2020 and 2021. $6 trillion in the United States alone, and probably 15 trillion across the Western world. So
that's new debt you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and we just devalued the currency. So yes, everything's a lot more expensive.
I did not have on my bingo card that the only real winner out of the Ukraine war was North Korea. And after I realized how much they benefited out of this, how much the war has changed, Ukraine or Russia's downstream have been attacked by drones, and they're down 42% in capacity this year in their downstream. That to me is an amazing number when you consider warfare has changed. So whether or not you can drill oil, it's useless until you can refine it.
Yeah, they got a lot of refineries. I just wanted to say that. And, there are no shortages anywhere except Crimea, which is a special case. Let me put it like this. The war for resources wasn't supposed to happen until the 2030s. Wasn't supposed to, according to whom I hadn't even heard about resource wars.
Probably the United
Planned
Nations.
or scheduled. I think we've always had resource wars. It's part of human history.
Somebody
Everything is
wrote a
about
book about
resources.
that, resource wars. Don't remember who the author was. Maybe he's referring to that. Anyway, it's like the IEA. Depending on predictions about resource wars, is kind of like depending on the IEA to tell us what oil supply and demand are going to be 6 months from now. It's a fool's game. The IEA has no clue. Someone said it's an organization that's outlived its time. I think it was Jeff Chestnut up the stream.
Jeff, yeah.
Yeah, and is now run by a bunch of clowns. Yes, Irina and I have been writing about that for about 5 years now. It seems like. Yes, Fatih Birol is a clown, and I wish Chris Wright would have just pulled U.S. funding from the organization last July instead of trying to reform it, because it's never going to reform. Their projections of supply and demand are absurd on their face. But at least, I think that the takeaway, the major takeaway for me from their latest report is that they're no longer talking about peak oil. At least they've given up on that bit of buffoonery.
Yeah, especially with this 2.2 million additional barrels daily in demand growth.
That's extremely robust compared to
That's a lot of demand growth. Yeah,
robust.
Yeah,
that's not slow growth. That's pretty rapid growth. And anyway, where was I trying to get to? I don't know. Anyway,
I like the OPEC's growth to 124 megabit with no peak in sight. That article was that I wrote after their OPEC's ruling came out, or their 20th edition of the World Outlook, the WOO, on 2026 on June 18th. Was actually a pretty good little report that they came out with.
I have to say that the IEA is kind of schizophrenic, because sometimes their data is pretty good, and then they massage it, and then and then it's like, okay, why did you need to do that? You add that interpretive spin that maybe that comes from Mr. Birol. I don't know.
It's like reading a poll from Reuters Ipsos.
Yeah,
they've got data that shows what public opinion is, and then they massage it to tell you what you ought to be thinking about the public.
Yeah.
Anyway.
This is how you should think about these numbers. I want to draw attention to a quote from the CEO of Repsol, who was at CERAWeek earlier this year. And I'm quoting him here. And he said, 5 years ago, nobody was talking about the replacement, right? It was forgotten. But we need to start thinking about how we're going to replace the current production in the coming years. Now you have to ask yourself, 5 years ago, why was it forgotten 5 years ago in 2021? And it's like all that ESG stuff where they were, since if you look at some numbers, I think, is it the Rystad numbers? No. Yeah, you can actually. But if you look at the amount of investment that was made up until 2015 in order to have the replacement values, it was like a trajectory, a bit of a peak like this. And then after 2015, it goes like this. And it's like, what happened in 2015? Well, that was the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
Where you then got all the institutional investors and the various nations who support Paris-aligned goals to say, we don't want more investment in new oil and gas. You can continue financing a company as long as it doesn't offer new oil and gas wells. So I think that's a big part of why there's been this decline in investment for new fields and replacement production, is that the ESG mess and the countries that are supporting the Paris Agreement. And now energy realities hit. And the impact of the Strait of Hormuz piled on top of the interruption of Russian natural gas to European Union and removing that from the market and whatnot, that's really kind of slapped countries around, saying you have to think differently about this. You can't be discouraging investment in replacement production. So, yeah, ESG has had a profound impact on what these numbers are, and hopefully
it's-
going forward it won't.
I'm not sure everybody forgot about the replacement ratio. In fact, the oil industry has been banging the drum about falling reserve replacement ratios across the industry because of what you said, Tammy. The Paris Agreement, the outflows of investments because we're all going green, and it just kept falling. New discoveries are much rarer than they used to be, and depletion is ongoing. It's inevitable. So you have to replace those reserves. It's good that this is now returning to the spotlight. But what about this recent study? It's really funny. I wrote about it, I think, on Substack, about how 90% of the world's businesses are planning to electrify most of their operations by 2035 because it's a good thing. It will reduce dependence on fossil fuels.
How's the electricity going to be generated?
That's what I ask myself as well.
Thing is just it's just mystifying to me. People think there's just this. It's like people, and these are sophisticated corporations. They think that they're just going to flip a switch and suddenly they're going to be electrified and independent of oil and fossil fuels. Well, what's generating 75% of the electricity, or 85% of it? You know, it's not wind and solar, guys. The electricity has to be generated by something, and it just always gets lost in these articles that you read about it. Oh, we're going to electrify the housing sector. Well,
yeah, they never pose the important questions.
Right. Yeah. It's just I don't understand it, and I guess it's just my closed mind on the subject, but I just think it's all stupid.
It's because it is. I think it is stupid.
It's kind of like buying a electric car and expecting Jennifer Granholm to spend $8 billion to get 7 charging stations that were being charged by coal plants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it may be a useful analogy for the underinvestment that's been happening in the industry, and it is quite low, and the replacement numbers are very low, which is why the alarm that the industry's been putting out there. It's like a farmer has seed, and you might save seed from the previous year, but it would be like you ate that seed and then you can't plant going forward. So if you think of it that way, you're consuming all your seed, so you have nothing to plant for the next year. Yeah. And that's kind of what's happening right now with the production declines and not adding to the fields that are currently in production. And I sent in the chat there, Stu, I don't know if you're able to pull that up. It's McKinsey, of all places, that's been at the forefront of stranded assets, don't waste your investment money, all that stuff. Electrify everything. And then they have this really great oil and gas exploration capex. And you see it peak in like 2014, 2015 is still pretty high. And then it falls off a cliff. It literally falls off a cliff. And then it's really low until about 2022 when we have the Russian thing. And then it slightly goes up, but it's not nearly at the point where we need it to be.
Yeah, it's been a problem since 2015. You trace it directly back to the Paris Accords and the rise of the ESG movement, as you said. It's started to recover here around 23 and 24, but then now we're falling further behind again in replacement investment. There are growth areas around the world, Africa mainly, South America. We're going to have to get into the Arctic in a big way. We have all these known resources up there. There's billions and billions and billions of recoverable oil gallons up there, or barrels. And, that's just inevitable. We've been fighting it in the United States for a long time on environmental issues. I think Anwar is a pretty small piece of what we have up there. But even Anwar is probably ultimately going to be explored to some extent, just because of the necessity of it. You have to replace these barrels. That's where the hard oil is in frontier places like that. But there's plenty of easy oil to exploit. We talked about a minute ago the Bakken going into second stage recovery with these refracts. Well, we've already been doing that in Permian Basin for 3 or 4 years now, and in the Eagle Ford Shale. You're going to be able to go back into these holes and refract them 3-4 times. You're only getting maybe 10% of the recoverable resource with each major frac job. So you go back in 5 years later and get another 10%, and you can keep repeating that process. And so those formations, I remember 10 years ago when we were in the middle of the drilling boom in the Permian and the Eagle Ford, talking about these being 30-year resources. They're really more like 100-year resources, because you're going to continue, technology is going to continue to advance and enable you to recover more and more of the resource that's in that rock. And it's not just oil, it's also natural gas. So those resources are going to go on for a long, long time and continue to bolster the foundational volumes for annual supply. But you have to get into these frontier areas, and that also includes deeper and deeper waters probably. So there is a lot of easy oil left to produce, but there's a lot of hard oil ahead of us that ultimately will be discovered and produced. And like everyone's saying, the challenge is to keep up with demand, which even the IEA admits is going to continue to rise through 2050.
But apparently the IEA believes there's plenty of easy oil still around, because supply is going to rise by 8 million barrels daily.
8 million barrels a day.
What's a massive increase?
When was the last time we increased global production by 8 million barrels a day in 1 year? I can't even, it hadn't been in my lifetime, I don't think.
Yeah.
Probably in the 1930s, I guess, when the East Texas field was discovered, maybe.
Or when they brought the Middle Eastern stuff online, like from Saudi Arabia, maybe?
That's right.
I don't know.
That's when it would have been.
If demand is only going up by just over 2 million barrels daily, why would anyone ramp up production so strongly? Never mind. But
they won't. That's the answer.
They won't. Exactly. But they put it in an official report. But meanwhile, I just came across a report about this year's COP31, which is going to take place in Turkey. And Turkey plans to propose, to go back to the topic of electricity and what is generated from, Turkey is going to propose a global target for electricity meeting 35% of the world's energy demand. What gets me by 2035, what gets me is how some people view electricity as equal, as a primary source of energy, like oil and gas and coal, which it isn't. It's a product.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling. It's just
yes, and
just
these
so
people
crazy.
are setting targets for all of us.
Yeah.
These are people in decision-making positions.
They want to have these nice round numbers, 35 by 35.
Yes, yes, it's so catchy, really. Yeah.
And it's like right now, I don't know how Arctic development is going to happen, given the Western countries' commitments to 30% conservation by 2030, 50% by 2050, where, like we were talking about the other week, where Equinor is complaining, Norway's complaining that they need to be able to do exploration in the Arctic, but the EU rules prevent them because the Arctic is pristine. You're not allowed to touch, you're not allowed to do this. So you're right, David. I think the Arctic, these frontier plays, for Western countries that can't develop their own on land are going to have to go there. But they're unable to go there because of the environmental conditions they've set themselves. So it's like
The
Defeating them.
hypocrisy is amazing. Hypocrisy is strong. When you sit back and look at Yoda, really was pretty strong when he was looking at Norway, and you have the UK banning the North Sea, and Norway is supplying, I think, 40% of the natural gas to the UK, but yet the EU is banning them from drilling more in the Arctic, which is an artificial line
Yeah.
to the Norwegians. The Norwegians are like, this is ridiculous.
But they still want Norwegian gas.
Yes.
Well, and I don't see the contradiction between these two. I think the Norwegian government is really right to be angry, extremely angry.
Yes, they are.
They should. And Russia
Raise the prices, raise the gas prices, see what happens. Really.
Russia just got their first LNG icebreaker tanker rolling, because the northern route is pretty critical. When you take a look at the Sakhalin 2 project,
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. Asia really needs that LNG.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think Russia will be the one to develop the Arctic. And,
Well, it's
which
got
is why,
most of it.
right, it's got most of it. And they have the nuclear powered tanker or icebreakers.
Yeah.
They're probably partnering with Chinese companies to do it as well.
And they've been
And
doing it, sorry for interrupting, they have been doing it for a very long time. So,
exactly. So, if there's these places where Norway's not allowed to go, what makes the Europe think that Russia won't?
Well, exactly. Yes. I mean, and that's the same thing with vis-a-vis the United States. I mean, if we in the United States aren't going to develop the resources that supposedly we have control of, what makes us think Russia won't just come in and do it? Of course they will, and steal it from us. I mean, will it really be stealing if you're just going to leave it in the ground? Russia be able to make a case? Well, I mean, nobody else is going to do it. We can do it. And so it just becomes a matter of national. Ultimately, it's going to become, for the European countries and the United States and Canada, a matter of national survival and freedom, maintaining free societies that aren't entirely reliant on Russia and China for resources. And maybe the Western world's just going to evolve to where people don't care about that anymore. That could certainly happen. But yes, MD Bone's right, because it's a resource war. It is a resource war. And I wasn't questioning that earlier, by the way. I was just trying to remember who wrote that book.
It's Michael T. Clare wrote that book back in, I don't know, I want to say 2010, 2009, maybe.
I actually read that book, but I've forgotten most of it. Yeah.
Speaking of
Yeah.
LNG, if you don't mind me bringing to the stage, this is the Hormuz Strait, and I've noticed that there are 5 tankers that have crossed through, crude oil tankers, just a little while ago. But I've also noticed there are 6 LNG tankers that are empty that are rolling through, going back to Qatar.
Yeah. Well, good luck to them.
Do what now?
Good luck to them. I mean, Qatar's going to have a problem for a while.
Well, they've got 2 months, another month, 30 to 60 days to get fired back up, but they're coming back in. It's a big deal that they're coming back in empty and they're ready as soon as Qatar is firing it back up.
Yeah.
That's important for the EU. And then I noticed that there is an African tanker at Karg Island filling up, as well as there's 2 other tankers that are there. Just found that very interesting this morning.
I love
there's
those maps.
Yeah, there's been a lot of traffic through the strait in recent days. There were 67 ships transited Friday and 55 on Saturday, and it's still active this morning, despite false messaging from the IRGC and its propagandists.
It's
oil
very
is flowing
important
through
to
the strait.
It's also very important to consider that the United States has got its main mixing bin, Cushing, Oklahoma, at tank bottoms right now. We're at 19 million barrels, which is below tank bottoms. you can't physically go below the 20 million without causing serious problems. We're only a few weeks away from draining the SPR below structural integrity. So it's a great thing that there's traffic going through the strait so we can stop draining our SPR. The tale of two SPRs was pretty cool. China used their SPR to keep China happy.
Yeah,
The
of
United
course.
the United States used our SPR to keep the rest of the world happy.
Mhm.
You shouldn't
But I
have.
mean, by China using its own, it helped keep a lid on the prices.
Absolutely. I'm
So-
not
Right.
discounting that at all, because by them not buying kept the price down.
Yeah.
And I agree, Irina, we should.
No, you
I
shouldn't.
just one thing about what Stu was just talking about. I mean, he's absolutely right about this problem at Cushing, and it's not just Cushing. There's several other major distribution hubs around the country that are also low. And I think it's really good that Exxon and Shell and Chevron have put out the warnings about that in recent weeks. I also think it's highly likely that we're not going to end up with a major crisis related to that, because the industry's always been so innovative and resilient in responding to that kind of a crisis. They will find a way to minimize the impacts. What that's going to look like, I can't tell you, but I suspect we're going to get to mid-July and realize that Cushing levels are going back up and there hasn't been a major crisis. Because I have faith in the industry.
Yep.
Maybe I'm Pollyanna.
Which isn't bad.
I've never seen a cross between Pollyanna and Eeyore before, but today is a great day.
Oh, you guys crack me up. You talk about a resource war and wars over resources. And I just want to highlight this book. It's called Operational Energy. It's co-written by Brenda Schaefer, who's a professor at I think it's the U.S. Naval War College. And the book is actually a text that they wrote for students at the War College. And it's got such great information about the importance of energy for military operations and the sort of geopolitics involved in it, and what you need for reliable energy. And they look at some of the historical case studies, so the different ones during World War II, what the implications were for World War I, and so on, and what this means today. And I think it's a really great book. I highly recommend it. Just to give, it's really short little snippets of really crucial information about the importance of resources and energy for war. And ultimately, people can say, oh, I want to be peaceful and all that, but you can't have peace without strength. And part of the strength is having reliable, secure energy. And for your society, it needs to be affordable too.
Yeah.
Yep.
You
No
should send
doubt
it to
about that.
Brussels.
I should send it
I'm sorry,
to you,
Irina.
To Brussels, to the European Commission headquarters.
Yeah.
Oh God. But that's such a great point, because every war really, Dan Jurgen does such a great job of describing it in The Prize.
Yeah.
And then again in the new map. Every
Yeah.
war in the 20th century and now into the 21st century has at its foundation been fought over energy. I mean, it's World War II was all about controlling energy resources and who was going to ultimately dominate those across the Pacific Rim, Indian Ocean, and in the Middle East. I mean, that really was a huge part of the motivating factor behind the germination of World War II and how it was conducted. We won the Battle of the Bulge because Germany couldn't maintain supply lines of fuel for its tanks. That's why the Allies won the Battle of the Bulge, which was the culminating turning point in the war. And we tend to forget about that, but it just is okay. The Great War had nothing to do with energy. Sorry, Chris. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And Civil War didn't have
Yeah,
anything to
but
do with slavery either.
well, I
Anyway,
mean, to be fair, like the Great War and World War II were not about energy, but energy made the difference on who won or
yeah.
lost,
That's
right? So, like
Well, that's true.
what Germany,
That's true. Churchill.
what Daniel Jurgen talks so great about in The Prize was the lesson Germany learned from World War I, where the Allies were able to use the taxi drivers from Paris to resupply their line. And Germany had invested so much money in rail, and the rail got blown up, and they couldn't get stuff to the line because
Right.
they had no rail and they didn't have enough petrol. So they couldn't bring cars and vehicles to the front line. And so in World War II, one of the big strategic moves that they talk about in operational energy is trying to secure Azerbaijan, as securing Baku
Right.
and going through the Caucasus, which then created a two-war front going after Stalingrad at the same time as trying to secure the energy fields. And their supply lines were too thin. They didn't get it, and so on and so forth. And then how did Nazi Germany get fuel? They had to gasify coal. So they still
Right.
needed the petrol, and they invested in autobahns and all that in order to make things run better. But it was really important for the execution of the war and determine who won or lost. But that isn't what it was about.
Speaking of Autobahns, I made a trip down to South Texas last week and took the toll road around Austin, where the speed limit is 85 miles an hour, and I was going 90 and getting passed by all the other cars. I had to drive in the right-hand lane because of all the cars passing me. So we essentially have an Autobahn in Central Texas now. It's crazy. I'm too old to drive that road anymore now. Imperial Japan couldn't. Yes. Trying to fly aircraft using methanol. Holy smokes.
Yeah. So in any event, today we need to replenish the reservoirs that are in decline. Otherwise, I don't know how we'll all get around and whatnot in 20, 30, 40 years.
We'll sit at home.
Stu, put up that slide that you have prepared for this show about the major projects that the big companies are looking at or actually already engaged in. Exxon with Staybrook, and you have all the activity along, Africa is just an enormous growth area, and Total Energies involved there. Shell is a big player in those provinces. So there's so much activity, drill ship dedication now to the west coast of Africa. It's pretty amazing. And those are these offshore, deep offshore provinces are where a lot of the growth is taking place. But then you have the Permian Basin, where not just Chevron, but ExxonMobil also, have basically turned the shale formations into a manufacturing operation, a true manufacturing operation where it's a repeated process over and over and over again with standard procedures and processes and technologies in use. It's like an assembly plant, Ford Motor Company assembly plant, which is why you've gone from 200 producers in the Permian Basin to now 30 or 40, and eventually you're going to have about a dozen, because those are going to be the companies with the capitalization to turn it into that kind of an operation. And same thing will probably happen in all the other shale plays too. But anyway, these are where the exploration is happening in these other provinces, and South America is just truly, Argentina's not even on there, but Argentina's having pretty significant growth as well. So there's a lot of new basins, a lot of new exploration. None of that is easy oil. Okay, that's the hard oil that has to come to replace the easy oil of today. Rodney McInnes
Great comment.
has something here.
It's pretty funny.
The UK wrecking its oil and gas industry may be a cleverly disguised defense strategy.
We have no oil. We have no gas. Move along.
Move
I love
along.
that.
Come
That's
after
awesome.
us.
Is that after they destroy their navy and can? It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Larpo Marx, the Seven Sisters oil companies rule the earth. It's amazing. They still kind of do to a large extent. But Elon Musk just raised enough money to put enough energy in space to charge the earth.
Maybe someday.
Maybe someday, yeah. And probably not as distant in the future as we think it is today, given the way Musk has operated. He's pretty extraordinary story.
I think it's pretty interesting about Tesla. Elon just filed for a patent for turning Tesla into an AI data center potential for all Tesla owners to be able to rent back GPU space out of their Tesla. It's a brilliant idea. So it's a pretty interesting little thing. I wrote an article on it yesterday. It's an amazing business model so that people get invested in their car and do it. So that's how you win the AI data space, is take an existing car, turn it into a GPU, and then rent it back when it's not being used. It's a pretty cool idea.
So that's like a virtual data center, like the virtual power plants.
Yeah.
Always sounds good in the surface until it gets used for other things.
Until it gets hacked.
That too. So just to bring it back to the reserve issue, I was looking at Equinor's annual report where they were talking about what their proved reserves are. And it was filed with the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. And it's the one from, I think, 2025. So it was talking about 2024. And what they did, they have declining reserve. So they're not necessarily investing, or maybe they were hamstrung or whatever. They weren't investing in developing new fields. They were purchasing them. And that there's a difference between spending on actual exploration and purchasing reserves. So Equinor was going and they bought reserves in the United States, in some of the reservoirs there, and they bought some reserves in, I think it was Africa. So it's, when companies are putting those numbers out there about what their reserves are and whatnot, and so some may show, like Equinor, suddenly their reserve position goes up. It's not always because they're out there exploring and developing new fields, but that they're purchasing that capacity.
Yeah.
There's an interesting comment.
Which one?
eProfitify?
eProfitify.
Here we go. Wonder if there's any analyst who has published the math of energy reserves to, men in the field, or another metric that should be the baseline before starting any major battle plan.
Basically, do people care about how much energy they have on the side before declaring war?
Imagine the Pentagon has hundreds of analysts like that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in logistics, because it's not just how much do you have, how can you get it to the front line is the big one.
Right. And keep it there and keep it coming.
And keep it there. Yeah.
In the middle of combat.
And the big thing has changed is drone warfare has changed dramatically.
Are drones powered by petrol or diesel? What are they powered by? Except batteries. I expect battle drones will not be powered by batteries.
The new one that is there depends on which ones. Ukraine just developed one that has a booster solid fuel rocket that kicks off, and then it's almost a natural gas type powered that goes 100 kilometers, I believe, or something. I mean, it's almost a turbo jet engine. but then most of the smaller ones are diesel. Batteries. But the drone boats are diesel. So
It's a mix.
What's their carbon
So you
footprint?
still
That's
need
the
fossil
important
fuels.
question.
nice, David.
Can we make them solar?
MD Bone has a really good one here, I think, that is relevant to Irina's piece at oilprice.com. Looking back, could the larger takeaway from the prior session be oil comes from places other than Hormuz? Because I'm seeing reserves depleting but not collapsing. Thus, Hormuz is less relevant today. And yeah, it's going to become even less relevant in 2 to 3 years.
It's a passage, it's not a deposit.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not relevant
Right.
in terms of production, it's where the oil passes through.
Iran pulled their lever of their control over the strait. They're trying to claim the Oman side, and I think that is a huge mistake. And
That
they
is a
have
non-starter.
that is a non-starter. They have pulled the lever, and you have the entire Gulf, including Iraq, planning pipelines out of there. It is
Yeah.
absolutely the Strait of Hormuz will be a short-term problem.
Yeah, there's workarounds. It just takes a little bit of time. But people expect like an outcome tomorrow.
Right.
Why haven't they built something tomorrow? And instead of, it takes a little bit of time, but clearly the choke points are an issue. And, people thought, okay, it's not a big deal. We don't need to do much about it. But now that people are realizing that it is an issue, then there's going to be workarounds. And if relations with Iran are normalized and they increase their production and they have a lot of oil production capacity, as does Iraq, we'll see what happens on the world supply.
Iraq had 3 tankers go out this morning.
Yeah.
But the country that's going to be screwed it doesn't really have a true viable path to an alternative, at least not in the near term, is Qatar, because they're exporting LNG. And unless they can make a deal with one of the countries that borders the Mediterranean to allow them to build an export facility and a manufacturing facility for LNG where they could just pipe their gas to the Med and then export it there, they've got real limitation on what they can do other than Hormuz. So they're the country with the biggest challenge. All the others, to get the oil out is a matter of getting an agreement to build a pipeline through other countries to the Med, basically. Because you really want to not bypass not just Hormuz, but also the choke points on the Red Sea, including the Suez Canal. And what's the one at the bottom of the Red Sea? I can't remember the name.
Bab el-Mandeb.
Yeah, because you don't want to be held hostage by the damn Houthis either. And so, yeah.
I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to put a pipeline through Israel.
Well, but I mean, when you look at that big, there's the one plan that India's involved in that would involve building a pipeline all the way across the Arabian Peninsula, starting in Oman, all the way up to Israel. Haifa would be the port of export onto the Med. And so, there's several of these projects that are under consideration involve using Haifa or what's the big city in Lebanon, Beirut, as the export point into the Med. So Israel's going to be involved one way or another.
Unless they bypass it and go through like Syria and Turkey instead, right?
Right.
Well, Irina, when we had our conversation, you said that Bulgaria lost a pipeline.
Yeah. And Turkey won a pipeline. So
and Turkey
is now turning into a regional energy hub, and they're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but it's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll turn things around unless we do something stupid with our current government.
Speaking of Turkey and COP31, I have a facetious question. And watching the World Cup soccer for about 2 minutes the other day, I noticed the announcers were pronouncing Turkey, Turkiye. Are we
Yeah,
now
because
going to all be required to say Turkiye into the
no,
future? Okay.
Like Kiev. Yeah.
Yeah,
they really
instead of
want to
Kiev.
make us all do it. I'm not doing it, as I'm not saying Zaporizhzhia. I
Thank
want
you.
someone to
Okay.
tell me why this word requires two j sounds in it. And Turkey is the Turkish word for the country, and I can understand they don't want the name of their country to sound like a bird.
Yeah.
But sorry, it's the English version of your
Right.
name. And there's actually this funny topic, because there's actually a debate online. People getting really pissed about it. You can't make us say Turkey. and, and people pointing out that the normal English keyboards on laptops and desktops, and even smartphones, don't have the special character that is required for the accurate writing of Turkey. So
It just
it's fun.
reminds me back in the 80s when the wars in Nicaragua were happening, the Contras and all that, and the Sandinistas, when every TV presenter on American television decided they had to mimic a Central American Spanish accent to pronounce Nicaragua, and so you had Dan Rather trying to say Nicaragua on the CBS Evening News. It was just hysterically idiotic, and
Oh
I
my
just don't want to
gosh.
go through that again with Turkey.
They try so hard.
Well, guys, in Canada, they're changing names in British Columbia and elsewhere in the country to be Indigenous, coming from languages that didn't have a written language. And so it ends up with a lot of funny accents and stuff that no one can pronounce. So,
But it feels good to be politically correct, I'm sure.
I suppose, yeah.
I still think the best video that ever won the internet was absolutely where they had the Canadians trying to put indigenous beaver signs on subway or train station stop points. Oh my goodness, that meeting was great. We got
With the
to have an
pictures?
indigenous turtle. We got to have a beaver. Why not just call it Stop B or this? I mean, we got to feel good about this stop. Holy smokes. It won
Oh,
the internet.
that was so funny where they had all these different images because not everyone understands words.
I was like,
Okay.
wow.
Oh, which reminds me, Tammy, I've actually had this story from Reuters open on my smartphone. I dare not close the window because I'll forget about the story. The CEO of Air Canada, was it, who had to resign because when he expressed condolences to some victims, he forgot to do it in French as well as English?
Yes. Yeah, he got fired for that. He's
Wow.
an Anglophone, right? And so he was supposed to
Whoops.
issue the apology in both official languages. And when it was on the website in both official languages, but when he went on X and social media, he read it out in English because he's an Anglophone, and he didn't follow it up in French. And so then there was this outrage that, oh my gosh, it was supposed to be bilingual. And yeah, he got fired.
Wow.
And they've now made it that all Supreme Court justices have to be bilingual. So that excludes like 90% of the judges from Western Canada to sit on Canada's Supreme Court.
Wow.
Oh, I thought, I'm sorry, I'm so ignorant. I thought all Canadians are supposed to be bilingual by law or something.
No.
Texans are bilingual.
Good.
Mexican?
What's that
And-
between English and gibberish? Or,
Yes,
we speak
Texican.
Texan too and English.
All right.
Yeah.
So I thought that Aslan won the contest of comment of the day with our argument over turkey. Yay! Yes,
We love
the kids'
turkey.
Thanksgiving turkey. Yay!
Yeah, I'm not
Oh.
saying that,
Thank you, Aslan.
Yay.
but it's funny.
That is fun. Okay, sorry. Little levity at the end of the show there.
Yeah, some comic
Absolutely.
relief.
Thanks,
Please like
everybody.
and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Anywhere else, like and subscribe. It really helps with the freaking algorithm. I hate that algorithm. Anyway,
Yeah, so we can get even more comments.
yes.